giants in the giant laboratory. The attack of the giant goldfish. Refuge in a giant egg crate. A moment of sanctuary. Then, well, there can be no sanctuary in the land of the giants.
Set in the then future of 1983, Irwin's fourth television series, The Land of the Giants, premiered September 21st, 1968. The pilot episode concerned the passengers aboard a futuristic airliner traveling from Los Angeles to London.
What's happening to us?
What's that thing out there, man?
We hit some kind of strange time warp, some big green ball, and then we were on this place where everything was 12 times larger. It was some kind of parallel world.
It's drawing us in, like a magnet.
What they encounter when they crash land is more than they or the audience can comprehend.
Stay where you are, please.
It's the funniest looking London fog I've ever seen.
If it really is London.
Maybe we'd better go out to see where we are.
Irwin had been developing his idea for Land of the Giants for nearly 2 years, and of course, directed the critical first episode himself.
He knew exactly what he wanted. There was no vacillating. I mean, this is the shot for everybody, for the actors, for the camera, for lighting, for everybody, sound. He knew everything.
Irwin told his set designers to think big. He wanted them to build a world large enough for giants to live in. Unlike today's sci-fi blockbusters, Irwin Allen didn't have computers or digital effects. When you saw big props on the screen, there were big props in the studio. His sets were among the most expensive and elaborate ever made for a television series.
There must be a way out.
It was enormous. The set where the ship, you know, had crash landed. I mean, it was, you know, 360-degree cyclorama surrounding, you know, 2 sound stages with these huge trees, and, you know, it was incredible.
Okay. Marker. Hey, boy. And action!
He was absolutely in love with this stuff, and you could see it. I mean, he would just get starry-eyed when he'd come down to the set. It was his playground. It was his big toy. And he would bring his friends down to see, you know, what new toy he had. Because Irwin was a kid, and so was I, and so I kind of recognized what he was doing.
When we shot the first episode, before we ever saw how it was going to be put together, we felt so foolish, you know, standing there going, you know, looking up at the Klieg light and pretending. But when it was all put together and we saw how Irwin was a magician and he made it work.
It
was a little different for me because I was more into concentrating and eyeballing somebody or getting into their head. And when you're talking to a spotlight and there's nobody there, it was a little different, that's all.
The most humorous moments would happen when you thought you were maybe talking to a giant, and that was what your whole emotional fabric would be all about.
You're making a mistake.
And then later on when they cut, you found that actually you were talking to a giant chicken. There was one hand. That was every giant's hand.
He's going to have this radio.
And after a while, we swore it had a life of its own, because it could be a very mischievous hand.
It's constantly coming in and scooping us up and then flipping over, and we'd fall out the other side. It never quite worked, but Irwin loved that hand. That hand was very important to him.
One squeeze of his fingers, that's all it takes.
The Scotch tape over the old bod, that was kind of ridiculous, you know. That gave us the giggles when Gary and I were on the slab, you know, under the microscope.
Because of the giant props, Land of the Giants was the most physically challenging of all Irwin series. The actors had to be in top physical condition and often performed their own stunts.
I mean, you saw us climbing those ropes. I mean, that was us.
Damn breeze.
Eventually they got some people in there for us to do stunts for us, you know, later on.
Of course, not all the dangerous stunts were handled by the stuntmen. During the filming of The Chamber of Fear, the script called for Don Matheson to fall into a giant revolving gear and pretend to be unconscious.
I hit that plank just dead center. I said, this is beautiful, to myself. I had my eyes closed. I'm unconscious. And then all of a sudden, something whacked me in the back of the head. Nobody caught it. It looked great on film. It looked very real. And Deanna was in the shot, and she was hysterical. She almost fell off the scaffolding because she thought it was, you know, funny.
Barry, I'm in trouble.
He's always held that against me. He's never forgiven me. Where I always let his head get cut off, right? No, well, I mean, I'm tried, you know. I mean, I didn't try to cut it off. I tried to help. But, you know, he was in serious trouble. And it was, they just kept grinding. And this is great acting.
Help! Help, anyone! Ambulance! Help! 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 Oh, thank heaven! Giant! Giant! Operator!
Of course, all these physical dangers paled in comparison to those posed by the giants themselves. Not only were they big, they were strange. So strange that even Irwin and the cast weren't entirely sure just who they were supposed to be.
In the first few episodes, it was really a different world. There was a different written language. Giants initially moved slowly. Their voices were muffled and bellowed, and you couldn't understand them. It appeared to be a very different world, a different planet.
Do you understand me?
Yes, we understand.
You must tell me everything. Where are you from?
From Los Angeles.
It was very difficult to interact with the giants, which it became clear we had to do. If they spoke a different language or if they couldn't be understood, that wasn't going to play. So, with very little explanation to anyone, it just changed.
I apologize for having done this to you. Please forgive me.
We really discovered that, you know, this giant land was a real fascist dictatorship, and there was a secret police, and it got quite paranoid, actually. I mean, it was very strange, and we had, you know, the little people were sought after as almost like political criminals, and, you know, captured to use against, in this sort of corrupt, dictatorial government.
So, we've captured 2 of them. We're trapped.
Land of Giants became a phenomenal hit in many countries that had what we would call totalitarian societies, and they said, well, this is, the little people against the government,
Why should we believe you?
Please listen to me. Under our form of government, phones are tapped. The walls have ears. They could have overheard you when you called me at the hospital. I couldn't take that risk.
When they took Land of Giants off the air, there was the biggest protest that had ever been in Romania. Something like 200,000 or 300,000 people had made some kind of protest the fact that they were taking it off.
Although Land of the Giants was canceled after just 2 seasons, the show continues to be popular all over the world.
The Giants!
Especially in England, where devoted fans publish dozens of books, magazines, and newsletters concerning the show and its cast members. Just like Tony and Doug in the time tunnel, and all of us lost in space aboard the Jupiter 2, the little people of Land of the Giants are still trapped out there, waiting for something or someone to bring them home safely.